Good evening, everyone. Vital villages, thriving towns. I am Sudhanna Gupta. Welcome to my channel. Iron tool and agriculture. We often take the use of iron for granted today. Things made of iron and steel are the part of our daily lives. The use of iron began in the subcontinent around 300 years ago. Some of the largest collection of iron tools and weapons were found in the megalithic burials. Around 2500 years ago, there is evidence for a growing use of iron tools. This included access for clearing forest and the iron plowshare. As we seen in chapter number 5, the plowshare was useful for increasing agricultural production. Irrigation. The kings and kingdoms you have been reading about could not be the existed without support flourishing villages. While new tool and system transplantation we also read in chapter number 5 increased production irrigation was also used. Irrigation works that were built during the time included canals, wells, tanks, and artificial lakes. Labor provided by the people. Farmers also benefit because crop production is more certain. Farmers have to increase production to pay taxes. Kings provide money and plan irrigation works. Who lived in the village. There were the last three different kinds of people living in most villages in the southern and northern parts of subcontinent. In Tamil region, large landowners were known as Villilar. Ordinary plowmen were known as Uzhavar, and landless laborers, including slaves, were known as Kadishir, Shir, and Adamai. In northern part of country, the village headman was known as Grama Bhojaka. Usually men from the same family held this position for generations. In other words, the post was hereditary. The Gram Bhojaka was often a largest landowner. Generally, he had slaves and hired workers to cultivate the land. Besides, as he was powerful, the king often used him to collect taxes from village. He also functioned as judge in the sometimes as a policeman. Apart from the Gram Bhojaka, there were other independent farmers known as Grihapatis, most of whom were smaller landowners. And then there were men and women such as the Dasha Karmakara who did not own land and had to earn a living working on the fields owned by others. In most villages there were also some crafts persons such as the blacksmith, potter, carpenter and weaver. Some of the earliest works in Tamil, known as Sangam literature, were composed around 2300 years ago. These texts were called Sangam because they were supposed to be have been composed and compiled in assemblies of pots that were held in the city of Madurai. The Tamil terms mentioned above the form found in Sangam literature. Sculpture and archaeology. These were stories that were probably composed by ordinary people and then written down the preserved by Buddhist monk. Here is the part of Jataka story which tells us how a poor man gradually became rich. A clever poor man. Once upon a time, there was a clever poor young man who lived in a city. His only resource was the dead rat. He started out by selling it for a coin to a hotel for their cat. Then one day there was a storm. The king's garden was littered with branches and leaves, and the gardener was at a loss as to how to clear the mess. The young man offered to clean the garden if he could keep the wood and leaves. The gardener agreed at once. The young man rounded up all the children who were playing with an offer of sweets for every stick and leaf that they could collect. In no time, every scrap had been neatly piled near the entrance. Just then, the king's potter was on the lookout for fuel with which to bake his pots. So he took the whole lot and paid the young man for it. Our young man now thought the another plan. He carried a jar full of water to the city gate and offered water 5 grass cutters. They were pleased and said, "You have done us a good turn. Tell us, what can we do for you?" He replied, "I'll let you know when I need your help." He then made friends with a trader. One day the trader told him, "Tomorrow a horse dealer is coming on the town with 500 horses." Hearing this, our young man went back to the grass cutters. He said, "Please give me a bundle of grass each, and don't sell your grass till mine is sold." They agreed and have him 5 bundles of grass. When the horse dealer could not buy grass anywhere else, he purchased the young man's grass for 1,000 coins. We can use other kinds of evidence to find about the life in some of these early cities. Sculptors carved scenes depicting people's lives in the town and villages, as well as in the forest. Many of these sculptures were used to decorate railing pillars and gateways of the buildings that were visited by people. Many of the city that developed from about 2500 years ago were capitals of the Mahajanapadas that you learned about chapter number 5. As we had seen, some of the cities were surrounded by massive fortification walls. In many cities, archaeologists have found rows of pots or ceramic rings arranged on the top of the other. These are known as ring wells. This seems to have been used as toilet in some cases and as drain and garbage dumps. These rings wells are usually found in individual houses. We have hardly any remains of places, market or home of ordinary people. Perhaps some are yet to discovered by archaeologists, others made of wood, mud, brick and thatched may not have survived. Another way to finding out about early cities inform the accounts of the sailors and travelers who visited them. One of the most detailed accounts that has been found by an unknown Greek sailor. He described all the ports he visited. Punch marked coin. Punch marked coin has generally rectangular or sometimes square or round in shape. Either cut out the metal sheet or made the flatter metal globus a small spherical body. The coins were not inscribed by were stamped with symbol using dice or punches. Hence, they are called punch-marked coins. These coins are found over most parts of the subcontinent, remain the circulation till early centuries C. Mathura has been the important settlement for more than 2500 years. It was important because it was located at the cross of road of the two major routes traveled from the northwest to east and from north to south. There were fortifications around cities and travel sharings, farmers and headers from adjoining areas provided food for people in the city. Mathura was also center was some extremely final sculpture was produced. Around 2000 years ago, Mathura became a second capital of Kushans and about you will reading in chapter number 9, Mathura was also a religious center. There were Buddhist monasteries, Jaina Shirin, and it was important to center for the worship of the Krishna. Several inscriptions of the surface, such as stone, stubble, and statues, have been found in Mathura. Generally, these are short inscriptions recording gifts made by men to monasteries and shrines. These were made by kings and queens, officers, merchants, and craftspersons who lived in the city. For instance, inscriptions for Mathura mention globesmiths, blacksmiths, weaver, basket markers, makers, garland makers, perfumers. We also have archaeological evidence for crafts. This include extremely fine pottery known as northern black polished ware. It gets its name for the fact that is generally found in the northern part of the subcontinent. Remember that the archaeological evidence of many crafts may not have survived. We know from text that the manufacture of clothes was important. There were famous centers such as Varanasi in north and Madurai in south. Both men and women work in these centers. Many craftspersons and merchants now formed associations known as the shrines. These shrines of crafts person provided training, procedure, raw material and distributed the finished product. Then shrines of merchants organized the trade. Shrines also served as banks where rich men and women deposit money. This was invested and part of interest was returned and used to support religious institutions such as monasteries. Between 2200 and 1900 years ago, ARIKAMEDU was the coastal settlement where ships unloaded goods from distant lands. massive brick structure, which may have been a warehouse, was found at the site. Other finds include pottery from the Mediterranean region, such as amphora and stamped red glazed pottery known as Argentine ware, which was named after city in Italy. This was made by pressing wet clay into the stamp a mold. There was yet another kind of pottery which was made locally through Roman designs were used. Roman lamps, glassware, and gems have also been found at the site. Small tanks have been found that were probably dyeing wax using the dye clothes. There is plenty of evidence to making beds from semi-precious stones and glass. Rome. This is one of the oldest city in Europe, developed around the same time in the city of Ganga Valley. Rome was the capital of the largest empire, one that spread across Europe, North Africa, West Asia, Augustus, and most of the important empire, who ruled about 2000 years ago, said that he found Rome a city brick and made it into city of marble. He and later rulers built temples and palaces. They also built huge amphitheaters, open areas surrounded by tires and seats, where citizens could watch all kinds of show, and public baths where people met and relaxed. Huge aqueducts, channels to supply water, were built to bring water to city for baths, fountains, and toilets. So that's all for now. Thank you so much. Please keep watching and please subscribe my channel. See you soon with new lesson. Till then, good night.